I was also surrounded by people that was their job. And I can remember thinking, I don't want to do this. And that was kind of when that penny dropped of what my dad had been saying of like, go and find something you really, really want to do. And I was surrounded by people, some were my age, some were a bit older, some had been there 20 years. And they just came in every day, did the same thing, clocked in, clocked out. And there was no end for them. Like my end was Thailand, right? But, there was no end for them. And I can remember thinking, this is the biggest kind of, I guess, wake up call.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds podcast, a show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show, we're joined by Jordan Stachini, the accidental entrepreneur behind Co & Co, a fast-growing marketing agency right here in Manchester. Jordan never planned to start a business until a conversation with a friend made her realise that she could. Now she runs a thriving marketing agency, but getting here wasn't easy. From breaking her leg and losing a job to starting a business 1 month before the pandemic. Her journey is one of resilience, risk and figuring out as she went along.
So, a lot of people actually think that, like, know me on LinkedIn and stuff, think I'm northern, and I'm not. I'm actually very southern. So I grew up,
Get out.
So I'd like to think I've been accepted now. So I grew up actually in a tiny village in Buckinghamshire. Boring as shit. I think I was ready to leave when I was about 11.
Yeah.
Unfortunately couldn't. So I grew up down there, mum, dad, 2 older sisters, younger brother, and grew up kind of in a very different world to how, especially my dad had grown up. So my mum and dad, kind of instilled into all of us a really kind of strong work ethic for different reasons. So my dad actually grew up on a shit council estate in Manchester, pulled himself out of it, left school at 15, joined the army. He went from a council estate in Manchester to Kenya, like literally overnight. Imagine that being in like East Manchester and then there's like a fucking giraffe there. Like how mad would that be? So he joined the army, joined the police. He met my mum while he was in the army. She was... they're both, my dad's actually from Manchester and my mum's from Yorkshire, so I'm from northern stock.
Northern roots.
Yeah, I've got northern roots. And my mum was from a very similar background to me, grew up in a, very, very nice area, literally grew up in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales. But because of kind of, I guess, having a young family and not living near their family and stuff like that, they had to do quite a lot of stuff on their own. So my dad definitely put a work ethic into us, and nothing came for free. If you wanted something, if your mate was getting a PlayStation or new trainers or whatever, and you wanted them, it was like, okay, so what are you going to do for them? Because you don't just get something for nothing.
Like chores and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just also understanding the value of stuff. So one of the things as well was like holding physical money and having to give the money. I mean, I'm of an age, so I do remember before there was like Apple Pay and like kids had like these Go Henry cards and stuff now, don't they? But yeah, like that actual like physical of like, here's the money you've earned and now go and give it to someone.
It's a real challenge. Like, I've got 2 kids, 5 and 3, and it's like I try and do that with the physical money because otherwise they don't get it.
Yeah, you don't get it. Yeah, even as an adult, you can kind of become a bit numb and desensitized to it. So definitely this strong work ethic, and my mum had an amazing career, really kind of high flying. I mean, I think the fact that at one point she had a 16-year-old and a newborn, and there was 4, and you just think, how the fuck did you do that? And like you were going to London, and you were and you were always at every sports day, you were always at every play, like you were at every parents, like how the fuck did you do that? But also then would like, if we wanted to like build a fort after school with all the sofa cushions and everything, she'd be like, yeah, cool. And like if we wanted to have our dinner in there, yeah, no problem. You just think, wow, like she was such a proper mum. Like, if you could like draw a picture of a perfect mum, that was definitely my mum. And my dad was very much, his whole thing was, I never want any of you to have to work as hard as I did for what I got. He always says the aim of the game is to work for as much money as possible for as little time as possible. Yep. And that was his kind of thing. So when I was about 15, I think all the colleges came in, because obviously you could leave school then at, 15, 16. I can't do that now. But the colleges all came in and started talking about like vocational stuff. And I went to a really good school where there was a really good sixth form, and it was kind of just accepted that everyone would go to the sixth form, but they had to kind of bring the colleges in if you wanted to go and do something more vocational. And they'd come in from like this college that was about an hour away from where we lived. And it was like all the girls did like beauty and hair and everything. And I came home from school and I was like, Dad, like all the colleges came in today. I know what I want to do. And he was like, what? I was like, I want to be a hairdresser. And he was like, you're not being a fucking hairdresser. And I was like, why? And his whole thing, what he said, it was like, it was nothing to do with being a hairdresser. It was the money. And it was the, he said, how much does a hairdresser earn? And I think at that point it was about 12 grand a year or something for a trainee hairdresser. And I was like, but I'm 15. So I'm like, £12,000. That's so much money. And he's like, okay, so £12,000. How many months are there in a year? 12. Okay, so that's £1,000 a month. How much tax do you think you pay on that? What's tax? Okay, so let's say it's X amount. Let's say you've got £800 a month. Then you've got to pay for a car. You've got to pay for a house. You've got to pay for clothes. How much money do you think is going to be left after? So I can't remember having that conversation. And again, it wasn't about being a hairdresser. It was
just trying to get you to understand money.
Yeah, and his whole thing was, look, go and do your A levels, and if you still want to do that at the end of your A levels, then you can. Everyone's always going to need the haircut, right? So if you still want to do that, then you can. I mean, I do say to him now, if I had been a hairdresser, I would have been like Vidal fucking Sassoon. But
exactly.
I get his point now as a grown up.
Yeah, and I think he was just trying to teach a lesson at that stage.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So I went and did my A levels, and actually that's where I hated my A levels. I resisted it so much, and I think I was one of those kids that I'd done quite well in my GCSEs without really trying. Yeah. So I just thought, oh, how fucking hard can it be? It turns out really fucking hard. A levels.
You can't wing that one.
No, and like the jump from GCSE to A level just felt unmanageable. Anyway, fuck the first year. So I did history, which I've always loved history, sociology and media. And it was in media where we had to do a module on advertising. And I was like, actually, I really like this. What I liked was I was like, oh, you can actually kind of manipulate people to do things by what you say. Yeah. And because I did sociology as well and like understanding people and everything, I was like, I really like this. So actually then I came home and I thought, do you know what, Dad? I think I'm going to put the hairdresser thing on the back burner. I think I'd really like to do something like this. So then I went to uni and did advertising, and I originally signed up to do single honours advertising, and I deferred for a year so I could go travelling. And that was actually a good learning experience as well, because in that year, my mum and dad were like, okay, that's fine. If you want to go travelling, go get yourself a job and you pay for it. All my other friends are getting, their gap years paid for. And my mum and dad were like, go and get yourself a job. So I did. But again, it was a great learning experience because I went and worked in like a contact centre.
Yep.
And I was the person at National Rail that you wrote your complaint letter to. And this was back in the day when you got physical letters. And originally I joined and got the job there. And I was actually like on the phone. And then they were like, oh, she's got a GCSE in English. Like she could do the letters. Yeah. So I was then the person. And I remember coming into that job every day. And obviously I knew I was doing that to earn money to go and do something I wanted. But I was also surrounded by people that was their job. And I can remember thinking, I don't want to do this. And that was kind of when that penny dropped of what my dad had been saying of like, go and find something you really, really want to do. And I was surrounded by people, some were my age, some were a bit older, some had been there 20 years. And they just came in every day, did the same thing, clocked in, clocked out. And there was no end for them. Like my end was Thailand, right? But, there was no end for them. And I can remember thinking, this is the biggest kind of, I guess wake up call, as you say.
If you don't sort of stoke a fire, it's not, and that's not obviously a criticism, but it's more that for you look at that going, God, do I want to wake up every day for the next 20, 30, 40 years?
And I was 18 at this point, and you think, God, like I've got years and decades and decades. So I did that, but when I then came to go to uni, they'd actually changed the course, so it was no longer single honours. You had to do it combined with something, which I wasn't happy about. So I went to like the lecturer and the head of faculty, or whatever it's called, and I said, look, I signed up for single honours and you've changed it. What do I have to do to get it changed back? And they said, well, you have to get a certain amount of people to agree with you. You have to get signatures. You have to put a case forward. I said, right, what's the first thing I need to do? I said, you need to get 50% of the class to agree with you. I said, okay, what form do I need for that? So they were like, here she is. I'm like, exactly. I can change the literally day one.
Not even day one, actually.
Yeah, so I came back 2 weeks later with 51% of the class. Brilliant. And I said, right, what do I need to do now? And they just kind of looked at me and were like, well, now you just kind of need to put your case forward. So, well, my case is the course exists and now it doesn't, and these people and me want it back. So I ended up getting the course reinstated.
That's mad.
And again, it was kind of that, I'm actually quite good at this, like persuasion, I think is what it was. And then
it's almost like your first sale.
Yeah,
in
basically, it was almost like that. I need to make something happen here. And then that was it. And I loved that course. I loved my 3 years there. I was very lucky in that our course was kind of as true to the real world as it could be, and that it was like 35 hours a week, which is for a uni course it's nearly full time. It's nuts. Yeah. And my friends who are doing like sports science and stuff doing like 2 hours playing rounders, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? But I loved it, and I did really well there. I ended up winning a couple of awards at the end of my degree and stuff, and off the back of having done well, got offered jobs before I'd left uni and stuff like that. But I just knew that I wanted to do that, and I think I'm very lucky in that a lot of people go to uni and they do something that they then don't end up doing a job in, and I guess I'm one of those anomalies in that I did. I went
cemented what you wanted to do.
and I loved it. And now I actually spend I spend time going back into colleges and universities and things like that, because I had a lecturer who always talked about this idea of paying it forward. And, he really kind of talked to us about obligation. And once you're in the industry, you have an obligation to help those coming up. And it's very easy, I think, for people in the industry to become a bit jaded and think, the next generation of this or they're that. And I've been quite vocal about the next generation, got me on LinkedIn News and all sorts of things. But I think we do have an obligation as people, as leaders in the industry, when you get to a certain point about what industry you're in, to help that next generation, because you can't sit there bitching and moaning that
if you're not playing a part.
And that isn't just on an individual level, but that's also saying to the universities and the colleges, if you want to produce good people, this is what you need to be teaching them. This is what will be valuable to me.
Well, and that's where the universities go off piece, isn't it? Because they haven't got any of that insight from industry. Yeah. So then they just end up thinking, teaching the theory. It's like, no, you need the insight to make it valuable. And
it's rigid as well, because, the course that, where are we now? We're in March. So all the kids that started uni in September that are now 6 months in, their course has been set for the next 3 years. Now, in something like marketing,
it's changed wildly in that time.
Like, it changes massively. If I think about what I was learning, like, it is archaic. And, that was I graduated in 2012. So, I'm not saying it was last year, but it's not that long ago that it should, but nothing I learned is almost relevant now. So, and that has only got faster and faster. So it's one of those things where I don't agree with these courses being set for 3 years. They almost need to be re-looked at kind of every year at least, to go, okay, is what we've got set for the next year relevant? But that needs to be done alongside industry individuals. Sure. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of, young people are there. It's a disservice really. And what they have to pay now for fees is extortionate. That if I was paying that for my course, I'd want to be learning the absolute cutting edge.
100%, the front of it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, which is why we, as an agency, have invested a lot in apprenticeships. So we actually, and this is the post that kind of got me in, not trouble, I'm not going to say, but it definitely got me some attention, is I kind of made a statement that we weren't going to take anyone into entry-level positions within the business that had come straight from university. And the reason for that wasn't to do with the grads necessarily. It was to do with what the universities were teaching them. Yep. They're learning bad habits, and they're also being taught preciousness, in my opinion. They're almost being taught that they are incredibly special and the most creative people on the planet. And the fact is, you're not. You might be, but you need to go and find that somewhere else. And what we found with apprentices that are coming straight out of school, 18, 19, 20, that don't want to go down the traditional university route, what they've got is this like graft element in them of, I want to learn. I don't want to go. They don't see the value in going to university for all the reasons that I've just said. They understand that they're not me or someone else that's been in the industry for 10,
they want to learn. They're there because they want to learn from you.
Exactly. And
what was so controversial about that statement?
So I think it was because I'd said that my experience, and I'm talking about 10 years worth of experience here, so my sample size is pretty fucking good, right? Yeah. That, sitting down in front of grads coming out, they have this idea of what they want, and it's,
it's warped perception.
It's warped perception. And I sat down in front of one girl, and she was lovely. Like, don't get me wrong, she was a really nice girl. She was clever. She obviously could read a book very well. But I said to her, you know, like, what does the future look like for you? And I'm not asking what do you want in the next 10 years, because you shouldn't know that. And I'm kind of asking, like, you know, the next 3 to 5 years, like, what direction do you want your career to go in? And she sat in front of me and she said, well, you know, the next couple of years, I'd really like your job. And I thought, I think what you're trying to do is be complimentary. But what you've actually done is undermine 10 years of hard work, because it's taken me 10 years to do what I do. And if you think you can do it in 2, either you are massively deluded, arrogant, or you're really trying to compliment me and it's backfired. And there's just this feeling of, well, you know, this is what this book says. This is what I was told.
And interesting, like, whereas a 17, 18-year-old on apprenticeship probably would never say that.
No. And actually, we've got one apprentice who she's just unreal. And when she sat down with me, God, had she done her homework, like on the business, on me,
the
industry, because she wanted it. Yeah, she wanted it. And, you know, I think sometimes grads can be led to believe that if you've got a degree, that's going to open doors for you. And it isn't the case.
Less so now.
Less so. And I think now, if I was 18 now, would I go to uni? No, I wouldn't. I think I'd go down the apprenticeship route. I really genuinely do. And we see some amazing people coming through the apprenticeship recruiters that we work with. And it's really good because they're learning on the job. They're also learning, obviously, as part of their apprenticeship. But this particular apprentice, the apprenticeship actually is, in our opinion, teaching some slightly archaic things. And she's actually challenged them and said,
cool. Taking a leaf out of your book.
Yeah, like that is, no, careful what you wish for, creating this like mini monster. But she said, well, that's not actually how it works in our business. And I think that, I said, look, you're not going to change the course necessarily, but the fact that you recognise that that's not the real world, I can't really ask for any more than that. And that's it. There's what you learn in the book, and there's a theory of everything, right? And then there's the reality of it, and then there's actually this is just how we have to get it done, and how we have to achieve our objective. So yeah, it turned out to be a slightly controversial, but had half the people being like, no, you bang on, and from across multiple industries, half the people wanted to burn me at the stake. But had a couple of grads who kind of came at me in the comments, and I said, what you're missing is you are the exception and not the rule. The fact that you're on LinkedIn, the fact that you are interacting, the fact that you are engaging, you are the exception, not the rule. So take that and run with it, because you will go and do great things. Right? You will go and do great things because you're already in this space. I'm talking about the mass who think I've got a degree, therefore I can do this job.
Well, you know, it's like you put a job advert out, you'll get 200 applicants, won't you? It's insane. And most of them won't even bother to do a cover letter, like an actual proper cover letter, or reach out to you on LinkedIn. All the basic stuff that is so easy to stand out, and they don't do it, do they? Exactly.
And that standing out is a really good point. And, you know,
but it's so easy to do it.
It's so easy to do. But what a lot of young people do, and I think, you know, I can remember doing this, and I think, I don't know what it is that makes you think you have to do this, but they come across like they're trying to be 40. I don't know how else to describe it, like how they write their letter and everything. And I think with what we do, you know, we're a creative agency. I want to see your personality, because
it'd be better sending an email to you saying, look, I've got no experience whatsoever. However, I'm a proper grafter. Can I have a brew?
100%. Like, that has got people more meetings with me than a cover letter, than a CV. The fact is, being very honest, if you're coming in entry level, I'm not really asked what you see. Your CV isn't going to tell me anything. It's about you, and it's about how adaptable are you to how we work? What's your work ethic like? What's your attitude like? Are you someone that I want to be around 40 hours a week? Am I someone you want to be around? I get that I'm not a fucking wallflower. Like, do you want to be around me 40 hours a week? So, you know, I guess my advice for anyone going for a job is, when you're going for it, be you, because you are going to be you at work. And that, when you're sat in front of someone, that's what's going to get you the job. So be as you as you can in that entry thing. You know, the dear sir or madam, I would be a great asset to your business. Would you? Why? Why would you? What's going to make you a great asset?
One of my best ever hires was one of my animators, and his application was dog shit, but he'd put loads of effort into like the sort of task, which was draw like a cartoon character, whatever. Loads of like his clear personality in there. Had him to the interview, he's borderline and mute, but took him out for a coffee afterwards, and he just chilled a little bit and got to know him a bit, and he was like one of my best hires I've ever made. Whereas if you, on paper, terrible hire, reality, amazing hire, because
it's so important showing that personality. but just not enough people. And I don't even think it's young people. I think all people are probably guilty of it. I think there's a perceived way of how you have to be, but ultimately, you know, if you are now. Just be you.
So going back then, you've obviously come straight out of university, gone into your first job. Was that a job you liked? Was it a stepping stone?
So how did you? It was. So my first job was in an agency, and I hated it. And I thought, I'm never going to work in an agency again. And now I own one. But it was an agency. It was a small agency. It was back home. So for a few different reasons, I ended up going back down south. I went to uni in Chester. I ended up going back down south. And I think I did 3 months again. So I'm back to the village, back to, you know, 3 surnames and 1 pub. And my mum, I think after a few months was just like, this just isn't you. Like you wanted to leave when you were 11. Like
your wings have been clipped.
Yeah. Like, you know, what are you doing here kind of thing. So I thought, yeah, you know what? I do want to go back to Manchester. That is where I want to be. So in a day, I quit my job. I went up to Manchester. I viewed like 10 flats, went for 3 interviews, talked myself into a job that I didn't really understand. But I thought, fuck it, I'll work it out. And that was it. And I moved up to Manchester. And that was in December 2012. And then in March 2013, I went home for a weekend. It was Easter weekend. Went out with my mates, got hammered, ended up, fast forward, having quite a bad accident where I stepped out of a taxi and basically snapped my foot off my leg both ways. Like it was, apart from like my skin, there's nothing holding my leg, holding my ankle on. Literally, it was really icy. I can't remember when Easter fell that year, but it was snowy anyway. And where we live was very rural. And I was staying at a friend's house, which, I mean, we're talking like a country lane, no road markings type thing. So very rural where she was living. And I just stepped out and I just went the wrong way. And then the taxi driver picked me up, and then obviously I put weight on it, not knowing what I'd done, and it went the other way. So it ended up almost like an angle to my leg. Taxi driver fucked off, just got in the taxi. Yeah. My friend, who at the time was training to be in the police, came out in like these pink Uggs with her warrant card, and everything was like, get off my friend. I thought he was attacking me, but it wasn't. It was just me like in agony. Got me to hospital. Anyway, ended up having to have my ankle kind of rebuilt, plates, pins, wheelchair, had to walk again on that foot. But I had only been in my job for like 3 months at the time, so hadn't passed probation, didn't know when I was going to be able to come back to Manchester, so lost that job. So ended up having to come back anyway down south for recovery. And it was kind of that situation again of, you know, okay, you've got a flat to pay for now, you've got a life to pay for now, you've got a car, this has happened, but you need a plan now. And it was that kind of work ethic that had been put in of my mum and dad.
You can't just mope around. You're gonna have to get...
like, you know, you can have your pity party for a while, but you can't live there. So, you know, what's the plan? So I applied for loads of jobs at a point where I was kind of walking again and able to get about. And I applied for a job with a property company who were based in Cheadle at the time. Again, didn't quite understand the role, but I thought, tell him you can ride a horse, work out to do it in the meantime. And I went for the interview, and I'd not actually walked upstairs yet with my physio. And we got there, and the guy who I was interviewing, who ended up being my boss for pretty much the 5 years that I ended up staying at that company, he was like, right, we'll just nip up to the boardroom and I thought, right, we just got to fucking do it, haven't you? So I limped up these stairs, and I was almost like, after you. And he's like, no, after you. And I was like, okay. It took me forever, what felt like forever to get up these stairs. I was like sweating when I got to the top. Anyway, did the interview, got the job. And it was a few years later, and we were talking about it, and he went, is that why on your interview? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I thought it was so weird, like how long you were taking to get these stairs. I was like, I hadn't done, like that was me doing stairs. But I ended up staying there for 5 years. So I joined as a marketing exec, and I left as head of Europe and Africa at 28. And
so literally entry level, literally, and then work your way through.
And that was one of those places where I owe a lot to that business. I learned a lot. That is where I learned about the commercial side of marketing. That is why, you know, I tout myself as the ROI obsessed, you know, least fluffy marketing person you're ever going to meet, because that's where I learned that. That's where I learned it all has to be trackable and measurable, and like the money has to create something. And there was very much a philosophy of imagine it's your pound, like would you spend it? And that's what I try and instill in my team now of, we can do all these amazing things, we can put all these amazing things to clients, but if it was your pound, would you spend it that way? And I think that's one of the best things that I learned there. But they, saw something in me. I was a grafter. I didn't know how to do the job, but I learned, I knew I was going to learn. And I was given a lot of responsibility. I was given, a lot of opportunity there, traveled a lot. And as I say, by 28, I was head of Europe and Africa, and I loved it. I loved that job. And then I went for a global role elsewhere. I'd built a really good reputation for myself where I was. People kind of knew about me, knew what I'd done. And it was bring your bag of tricks and come and do it here. So I did, and I think that's where I knew that was the last place I was going to work for somebody. Didn't really know why. I just thought, I just
can you try and explain that? Where's that come from?
I think it came from. I was aware I was a bit of a one-trick pony, and I thought I can just keep doing that. People kept, dropping into my LinkedIn DMs all the time. This property company, that property company, come and do it for us. Could we have an interview? And it was when I was at that second company that I just thought, I just can't see myself doing this forever.
For the next 20, 30
years. And I was talking to a friend of mine who owns an agency, and I was talking to him about it, and I was saying, this company have asked me if I want to go and have an interview. I'm thinking about it. And he was like, why don't you just do it for all of them? And I was like, it doesn't really work like, employed head on. It doesn't really work like that. Like people kind of want you there in their business. And he was like, well, no, if you're saying that you could do it, standing on your head and within 6 months they'd be set up in the way that they want, why not just go and consult for them all? Because all they want is a strategy, right?
Yeah,
all they want is the plan and for you to put the pieces together.
That's what your knowledge, presumably, at that point, right?
Exactly. So I thought, it's not a bad idea, really. So I went back. There was about 3 on the table at the time, and I went back to them all, and 2 of them said no, like we want you, like why we want you, and the other one said if that's how it's got to work, then totally fine. So that was enough to kind of set me up to be able to leave, full-time employment and take the risk. And I was fortunate. The relationship I was in at the time, my partner had a very good job as well, and I think that's the other thing about being self-employed is. There's 2 things that I've learned about being self-employed. One is no one prepares for how lonely it is if you do it on your own.
Big time.
The second one is when you go self-employed and you're in a relationship, the other person is also accepting a lot.
Yeah.
They're also taking on a lot of risk.
Big
They're also
time.
taking on a lot of stress and pressure that they didn't ask for, that they don't necessarily understand. And they kind of just have to go along with it. And I think those 2 things are really not talked about enough with people that go and do it themselves. If you've got a co-founder or something, then I guess the pressure is kind of off that other person a little bit.
You can talk about those problems with.
I mean, at the very least, you've got someone to split the financial burden with, right? So those 2 things don't get talked about. But I was fortunate. He was like, if that's what you want to do, then do it. So I did, and that's how Co & Co started. And Co & Co actually stands for consultants and collaborators. That's how it was meant to be. It was meant to be me consulting and collaborating with people at a kitchen table 3 days a week from wherever I wanted to be.
Although interestingly, from like the external point of view, you didn't call it by your name. You called it something that clearly could grow into something more than just you.
So the reason I did that is because I wanted to be perceived as a business. Because
the we, not
the we, not the
royal
me.
Way.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's being a marketing person is I thought I want to show
gives you the flexibility,
scale,
right?
and I want to show credibility, and I want to be able to show that I'm not just a one-man band. So that's why I did it. But for the first 2 years, the we was very much a royal we.
You mentioned it, which is quite interesting. You had every intention of it just being you at your kitchen table. Why isn't it that?
So a couple of reasons, really. Just the amount of inquiries that kind of came in, the amount of opportunities that came in that I didn't want to say no to. I'm also really bad at not doing anything, so I'm actually not built for a lifestyle business at all. Like I am a 5 a.m. I'm a do my admin 5 till 6, go to work. I like that. I like being busy. I can't sit down. I really struggle with off time. So I don't know why I ever thought a lifestyle business was going to be for me.
Sometimes I think when you've first stepped out of, because I did the same, when you first step out of employment, you kind of think that's what you want. And you almost maybe limiting your own ambition a little bit. 'Cause you're like, that'll be an easier thing to do. Then I probably can't grow a proper business almost sometimes. I think that's what I did anyway.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people want is actually just ownership over everything.
100%, yeah.
And that's ownership over, if I want to work 60 hours a week, I'll decide I'm going to work 60 hours a week. No one's going to tell me. So I think it's ownership that people want over lots of different things. Because actually, you're never more skint and have less flexibility than when you start a business. Yeah. That's the other thing that they don't tell you. There was that. I didn't want to say no to things, but also just at the right time, a friend of mine, who is now our creative director, who I was telling you about before we started recording, has been my best friend for 14 years. She was looking to leave where she was and does a very different type of marketing to me. So my background is very strategy, it's ROI, it's how you're going to make the till ring, it's very linked to sales. Hers is very much more about experience, and it's about offline interactions, and it's what does the customer feel, and really the opposite side of the coin to me. Cheese, and she was kind of looking to make a move. And she talked to me about going at it on her own. And I said, look, mate, all I'll say is it's a lot of graft, as in you've got to get this set up, you've got to do that, you've got to do this, you know. And she was like, oh, I don't know, then maybe I'll look just for another in-house role. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, why don't we just do it together, do it under the umbrella of Co & Co, and we'll just pivot what the agency does. So I put that to her and she was like, yeah, cool. So that's what we did. So immediately overnight, we became a totally different type of marketing business. And we were able to offer that full end to end, because a lot of what she does, there's other people that do it, but they don't allow clients, or they don't give clients a way to track it and to monetize it and to actually drive an ROI. Whereas because my whole philosophy is, if you're not measuring, you're not marketing.
Yeah, so you could take her skills but underpin it with
exactly.
ROI.
We can go, right, how do we do that? But how do we actually explain to a client, if you put 10 grand, 100 grand into this is what you can get out the back of it. And that really works. And that's very different to what other people are doing in that space. So that's what we did. And then again, you know, there then just became more of a requirement. So then the team had to grow again.
How's it been working with someone you've been so close to for so many years? Because I imagine that's been challenging at times as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the one thing I would say is that because we have been such good friends and so close for so long, and we are totally different people. We don't just do different jobs. We are fundamentally different people. But it really works, and we are a really good balance of each other, and we're really respectful of each other. I think that's the main thing. I completely respect what she does, and she completely respects what I do. We're very different in personality. You know, I'm much less empathetic than her. I'm very black and white as a person. Something is right or it's wrong, and there is a bite. You know, I sometimes talk about things as, sometimes your choices are, what arm do you want to break first? Like, there aren't always good options. And what annoys me more than anything is when someone is like, oh, I'll just wait until the best. Sometimes, how do you know the next thing that's going to come along isn't worse than what you've got in front of you right now? All you can do is make a decision based on what you know in this moment. And if that is, I need to break one arm before the other, then that's your decision. You have to do it, and then you have to move. So I'm very like that, whereas she's very much more, let's take a minute, let's think about it, you know, and that balances really well. There have been times where we've had to have tough conversations with each other, but we're also really good at, we can be having a conversation over email about something and a conversation on WhatsApp where we're sending each other stupid memes at the same time. We're very good at separating the work us and the friend us. And we make time to go on a mate's holiday every year and to do, you know, mate dates and stuff like that. But we're very good at the separating part. And we do listen to each other. And yeah, we just respect each other. So it isn't easy all the time, as no relationship is. You know, working with your other half is probably very similar, I imagine. But yeah, we make it work really well.
Along your journey, have there been any, like, what I'd call a sliding doors moments where you can look back and go, that's been a key part of the journey?
I would actually say breaking my leg was probably the biggest thing that could happen to me, because I was on a different path there. I genuinely believe I needed to go and work for that company that I ended up working for to be in the position that I'm in now. And I would never have done that had I not broken my leg. I think that is the biggest thing. I think the other thing is probably finding like fitness, health and fitness, that enabled me to unlock almost like I talk about it as like becoming awake. Like it unlocked part of my brain that I thought, oh shit, like I can really go at this.
What stage was that in the journey?
So at the time that I started Co & Co, so I started Co & Co a month to the day before the national lockdown happened, which was really good time to start business. In fact, on the first anniversary of it was my Co & Co birthday, which would have been the 24th of Feb 2021, we sent out these press packs, and they were branded face masks that had a sticker on them that said 2020, what a great time to start a fucking business. And you just got to lean into these things, right? It's happened, so you just got to lean into it. So at the time I started Co & Co, I, as I say, did it at the time of lockdown, and you just see yourself all the time, don't you, on like the screen and everything. And I wasn't in a good place within myself. I'd had a great job, but it was very unhealthy. I traveled a lot. And when you travel a lot, you don't get the right sleep, you don't get the right food, you don't move very much. So I'd become very unhealthy. And I was seeing myself all the time, like on these Zoom calls and team calls. And I just thought, fuck me, is that what I actually look like? Like, that's horrendous. And we'd gone, me and my partner at the time, we'd gone on this holiday that we did every year with our family down to Cornwall with the dogs and everything. And there was a picture of me sat in this deck chair, and honest to God, and my partner at the time was a big guy, and I was sat next to him, and I was like dwarfed. He was like dwarfed in comparison to me. I just remember thinking, God, like this is horrendous. So I basically got in touch with a girl that I know who is a PT. I knew her from years ago. She was actually an account manager of mine when I was working in-house. She sold media, and we worked together then. She'd actually gone through her own kind of body transformation, became a PT. So I knew her enough to be like, look, I want to do this. Like, can you help me? So I kind of gave my body over to her, and I lost 5 stone in 18 months. Yeah. And I threw myself into that. And the reason I threw myself into it initially was because I wanted to look different, but I very quickly realized I felt different too. Like, I felt happier. I felt I could just handle things more. I was more able to think about things. I had clarity on things. I felt happier, and that kind of enabled me to deal with other things that were going on in my life that were quite difficult better. And I genuinely think that discovering that, and now health and fitness is a massive part of my life. It's a non-negotiable for me now, and it's a non-negotiable that I have for my team as well. Like, it's really important to me that they prioritize it, because I am my best self because I do those things. I'm a better person to be around. I'm a better person to work with. And that was one of those moments as well that I do sometimes wonder, if I hadn't done that, would I now be in kind of the position that I'm in with the business and stuff?
It's probably like
would it have got me there?
Positive habit building as well as
and it
mental
teaches you,
clarity.
honest to God, the things that it taught me about discipline, about learning to do something difficult, having to stick at something.
And it's those tiny incremental gains as well.
It's the 1%.
Yeah. Whereas, because it drives me mad when I speak to like people who want to start a business, and they might create a good product, but they can't be asked to sell it because the selling's dead hard, because it's 1%. It's a little bit,
spinning your wheels for a really long time.
And it's a lot of effort into it. And fitness is a similar analogy. And it's like you don't see the growth day to day, but then you do the year on year comparison, and it's massive. And
then you almost learn, and the business is kind of the same, you almost learn like the hacks. So first of all, it's, calorie deficit, it's up in exercise, then it's macros, then it's certain types of exercise.
Leveling up your knowledge all
you
the
then
time.
start to go, oh, if I tweak this bit slightly, if I go from just counting calories to actually tracking macros, that switches it. If I then rebalance those macros, that switches it again. And you kind of just learn these tiny little, as you say, increments that make massive, they really swing the dial. So I definitely put that is one of the things that makes me good at what I do, because, and I was guilty of it, very similar to what you just said there. The very first time that I went to work with my PT, I was 5 stone overweight. I was 14.5 stone at my heaviest. I'm 5'3". So, that's a lot of weight for a little person. And, I went into it. I hadn't ever had a very good relationship with the gym, in that I just saw it as you go on a cross trainer or you go on a treadmill, and it's boring. Like, you get through it. I'd never lifted a weight in my life, whereas all my training now is all weight training. Before, I do very little cardio. Like, I'm very well known with my PT that I fucking hate cardio. So I don't really do it. Like, I just do weight stuff. But I turned up for the first session, And I'd done this initial like 6-week thing with her. She was like, come on a 6-week thing, you know, let's see how we go. I genuinely thought after 6 weeks, I'd be like a fucking supermodel. I did. Because I was like, well, that's what you do, isn't it? You get a PT.
You do a transformation. Yeah.
6 weeks. And I didn't. And I was heartbroken. And that was, again, a moment where I thought, fuck, this is going to take more than just going to the gym once a week. Like, I'm really going to have to...
lifestyle change.
And that was it. It was a lifestyle change. And I went to ground for 12 months. And I had friends that said, you went into your house one day, you came out and you were different person, like different.
And different, not just like physically, presumably.
Different in every way. Different in every way. My relationship actually ended during that period of time as well. And, you know, I'm not saying it was a result of that at all. I think that I'd probably been on the cards for a little bit of time. But it was one of those things where I found fitness and I loved it and it made me feel really happy. And I did try to bring him along on that and say, you know, I'm doing this thing and it feels really great. And I'm also trying to fix this here. And I think at the time, I think it was probably too far gone. And I think he thought, oh, she wants me to be different. I couldn't have given a shit if he'd lost a pound or not. I knew the way I felt and I knew the way how it was making me feel better. And I wanted him to feel that way and I wanted us to be better. But by that point, I think it was too far gone. But yeah, everything had changed.
Transformational year, effectively. And then the business now, where are we at now? What's the big goal for it?
So, God, where are we at now? So now we're at a growing team. We need to recruit, but we need a bigger office before we do that. We were just having that chat before. We also need a different type of office. So, you know, when I started out, as I say, it was very strategic. It was very, you know, you just really need a laptop and a desk. And that isn't where the business is now. We do a lot of activations. We do a lot of events. We do a lot where we need a lot of stuff. So we actually need a space where we can store that stuff or we can catalogue it, you know, rather than have it spread out across lots of different places at the moment, which drives my little OCD brain wild. Sophie's completely fine with it. That's how different we are. She's just like, yeah, I know where everything is. I'm like, but I don't. She's like, but you don't need to know. I'm like, no, I do.
I need to see it.
I'm like, I need to know where it is. So yeah, we're there. We're doing some amazing stuff, working on some amazing brands and businesses and things that I never ever thought that we would be doing. And that is testament to the team. That's not testament to me. I just walk into some rooms, say some stupid shit, and come back and go, right, we've got to make this work now. But now that the business has moved to a place where we really know what we specialize in. So it's strategy, branding and activations, and we don't touch anything else. So even when we're doing strategies with people, you know, we can sit down with someone and go, you need a strategy that includes PPC or SEO, for example. We don't then try and do those things. Those people, we're partnered with people that we'll bring in, and we kind of sit as that.
Often the best way, right?
Yeah,
and also get the experts.
I don't want to do it.
Well, there's that as well. Something I tell people all the time: build the business you want.
Yeah.
I think some people get way too distracted in building stuff and then go, oh shit, I'm in a fucking prison that I hate.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you can fall into that trap, can't you, when you start of like, just say yes to everything. And I think one of the things
and you do when you start, don't you?
Yeah.
You almost have to.
Yeah, exactly. And
there comes a point you've got to say no.
Yeah, you have to say no and you have to know what your strengths are. So we're very clear now on what we do, which is great. It's a great place to be. And yeah, I'm excited for we just turned 5, and I'm excited for what the next kind of five years bring. I never thought we'd be here in 5 years, so God knows where we'll be in another 5.
That's Jordan Stachini, the founder of Co & Co. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please do make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can also sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown and, of course, to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.